I call this meeting to order, 6:30. Roll call?
Christian,
Yes.
Oster,
Here.
Chesky,
Here.
Soder, Bowles,
Here.
Whittington, Holiday.
All rise for pledge allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We don't have a board secretary tonight, so Ashley, I'm gonna appoint you as board secretary for the evening. Looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Jeske. Support. Supported by Bowles. All those in favor with the raised right hand, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 4-0. Looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Oster. I'll support. All those in favor with the raised right hand, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 4-0. Student and staff recognition.
All right. I want to give a big shout out to the following students and Dr. Picard for helping with the recent blood drive. We had Kale Lindsay, Mariah Thompson, Andrew Partenio, Aiden Partenio, Abby Partenio, Chelsea Ensing, and Mackenzie Warren. Big thanks to them for helping coordinate the blood drive through Versity Blood Center of Michigan. We were able to raise or obtain 26 units of blood. Really a good effort for them and for the community members. I'm also happy to announce we have another one scheduled November 17th from 8:30 to 3:30 also here in the library. You may register online at Versity Blood Center of Michigan. Just type in the date and pick your time. So big thanks to our student Senate students and Dr. P.
Public comments, I see one. Mr. Sir?
Good evening, everyone. I'm here to let you know that I'm bringing the good drama in that Kayla Aileen and I are working together to make sure we have a forensics team both on the middle school level and the high school level, and where we can start competitions in February, March, April, kind of thing. The second item is that Mr. Baker and I have casted Alice at Wonderland, not Alice in Wonderland, but Alice at Wonderland, which is a modern adaptation of the classic tale. It was published in 2014, so there's even references to iPhones, Google, Verizon, and a couple other modern takes on it. So it's going to be a fun adaptation that will not be Disney and not cost thousands of dollars. And then Mr. Baker and I also have gotten started with our first semester of the Performing Arts 7th grade. We are going to be performing Aesop's Foibles, which is a fun take on Aesop's fables, and we'll be performing that early January, right before exams. And then our second semester of 7th grade, we'll be doing Knights of the Rad Table, and performing that in May. So we got our 7th grade program ready to go for this year, and we're excited for both of those. And based on the success from last year, our enrollment numbers are up in choir and performing arts and stuff like that. So it's all heading in the right direction, and I hope to see more expansion in those classes in the years to come. I talked about my retirement date, right? Yeah, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Presentation, dances and athletic events code of conduct update.
So I'm going to turn it over to Jeff. Jeff gets to tell us all about this, and I'm excited to hear it.
Yeah. So Mr. Moore and Mr. Watson and I have been meeting on this particular matter over the majority of the past, I guess 2.25 school years now. As we're trying to refine some processes for extracurricular events, including sports, sporting events as well as dances and things. And what we're noticing, we've taken some communication back to the core ISD secondary principals meetings. And what we have found is we are the only district in the area, something we're very proud of, that does not charge our kids to get into games. And so that is amazing, and it's something that we want to keep up. But we also feel that we're at a point where we have so many of our kids complying with reasonable behavior expectations. I was immensely proud of our student section at the last game. Not only did they come out in droves, but when the game was over, we had 8 students, funneling through the bleachers, picking up trash and throwing it away. But we still do have a subsection of students who are not complying with behavioral expectations. And there is a very distinct correlation between the behavior at games of students and their discipline record. And so right now what we've been having happen is, as a student gets suspended, if we're seeing it being a frequent occurrence, whether it's common discipline referrals or multiple suspensions, or a suspension on top of multiple issues at extracurricular events, we have then been adding to their punishment. Yeah, you're suspended from school for 3 days for the vaping incident, but we're also going to take the 2 games that we had to ask your parent to come pick you up because you wouldn't stay out of the cracks and crevices in the hallway that you're not supposed to be at. That takes a lot of manpower to do that, right? And so at the last game, this became very apparent as huge turnout. Our community and our students are showing up to all sporting events this year. You go to a middle school volleyball game and it is chaos. It's just, there's tons of people. I mean, the best kind of chaos, right? It's people cheering for our Bobcats. The crowd is packed, but we had an unfortunate incident at the last football game in which there was a physical altercation between 2 students. And Mr. Watson and Officer Zarevsky had to drive those 2 students home, which left Mr. Maury and myself to chaperone a couple thousand people, including, we're talking about hundreds of kids, all different ages, including, little ones who are just tossing the football around, being completely appropriate, but knees get scraped, kids get dinged up, and they need somebody to intervene. What we can't have is, when we need to remedy things like that, we then also have a group of students who are not meeting our expectations, and they're just essentially playing whack-a-mole. So wherever I am, they then move over to a different part. And so the simple solution is, theoretically, just more oversight. But that is always the solution, is always just have more people who are, their week is over, their work week is over, just pay them, a little bit extra money. Well, when other districts are doing that, it's because they're charging their kids to get into the game, and we don't want to go that route. So we feel that instead we're gonna have the expectation for our students be, these are a privilege, they aren't a right. And so instead of it being the approach where you could potentially have, we might, if you get suspended for something, we might take this away from you. We are changing the language, or we'd like to change the language that says, if you get suspended from school, you are also not allowed to go to extracurriculars for the remainder of that sports season. And we use sports season as opposed to marking periods or semesters because it's a more natural break. We also don't think, this is not a black and white policy. I am not a punitive human being by nature. I do believe in the restorative processes, but I think that it's also a better practice to have an expectation, uphold the expectation, and then a student shows that they are truly trying to fix their behavior and to reinstate that privilege versus what is happening now where we are punishing a kid and then saying, oh yeah, we're gonna add on to it as well. But this is not a policy, as people hear it, that we think is gonna involve a lot of kids. But we do have students who are chronically misbehaving, and then there they are on Friday chronically misbehaving at a game as well. And at a certain point, there has to be an expectation that they meet the standards that we are putting out there as well. And so what we would like the language to be is students receiving any suspension due to a violation of the policies in the student handbook will also be subject to a suspension from attending extracurricular activities for the remainder of the current season. And so there are flaws to this for sure, right? If you get a suspension in early October, your extracurricular ban is much longer than you get it if you get it in October. But as you know, Mr. Watson and Mr. Maury and myself primarily are the ones navigating this behavior, and I can point to suspension statistics, and I can anecdotally just tell you it's the same students that we are having behavioral difficulties day in and day out at school. We are also trying to make sure that they don't dump their popcorn out on our lawn and pour their soda down our bleachers, and they're good kids, and they just need to continue to be worked with for sure. But I think they also need to know, like, there is an expectation that so many students are meeting. And I again, it's the restorative piece I agree with, but at what point is there there's an expectation that you have to meet too. I'm a bleeding heart just like everybody else. But the Friday football game in which there's 2,000 people in the stadium, and you're starting a physical altercation or vandalizing the property, and we're just continuing to beat ourselves up because we want to offer this service for free, right? We want our kids to be there. And I don't want to go and say, hey, every kid's gotta pay $3 to get in so that we can pay for 7 more adults to be here. That doesn't seem fair, and so this seems, I just don't find a whole lot of pushback against the policy in which the only thing that you have to do is not get suspended. Like, that is the crux of the policy. Don't do something to get suspended, and knowing that even if that happens, we're still looking for avenues to get the kids back to those extracurricular events. So I think that the primary pushback on some of these is, the individual makes a mistake right before prom of their senior year and gets a 3-day suspension. Again, I'm trying to ask for a little bit of trust that I'm not heartless. This is not meant to be punitive. But there are, just speak very directly, there are some parents who do not want to partner with us on discipline for their student, and we just need some reinforcements in that capacity. Any questions on this?
I like it, it's not a question. I like that a lot better than starting to charge, because I know that was kind of some talk from Mr. Murray was, well, we might have to start charging people, and I'm thinking, so the kids that are causing the problems are now making the kids that aren't have to pay to be there. I prefer this approach for sure.
What's kind of the plan for keeping them out, so we know it's a volunteer typically at the ticket stand, so how are we kind of monitoring that?
Yeah,
for
so,
the kids we're trying to get in?
So we are talking about those processes, so a lot of times it is a volunteer, but a lot of times it's Mr. Watson, Mr. Moore, and myself are in that area, right? And I will say this, like, 28,000, it's a Disney World Steps Day every football game, right? I'm just throwing that. So I would say over the course of time, like when we have done this to an individual student, they have snuck into the game multiple times, and usually somewhere between the first quarter, we've identified that student and we've walked them out. It's not going to be a perfect process, but it also, that does give us that next layer of we very clearly pre-communicated this to you, and you violated this policy. It's much easier, so we think about it through the scope of football games, because those are the big ones. This is a much easier policy to enforce where it is more chronically a problem, which is basketball and volleyball games. It is the interior events that are much larger issues, because the honest truth is with football, there's so many people and it's such a big stadium that everything gets spread out much more. It's the interior stuff that we're kind of having the concerns about, because this building, you know, students try and find cracks and crevices, but we know as they come in that door, if we position ourselves right, we catch them pretty quickly coming into the building. So as much as this policy will be impactful for Friday and homecoming, which are going to be the two most widely attended events probably on campus all year, it's going to have much bigger ramifications as far as making a great environment for winter activities and volleyball games and things like that.
Is there anything better we can do to support you in the interior games as far as the cracks and crevices, like?
No, so we have, Mr. Williams has already allowed the purchase of, we bought some more expanding dividers, which will allow us to section off portions of the building, because there is a piece too where the optic representation of this is a barrier. I don't mind those conversations, right? So I don't mind putting up a barrier, the kid pulls it back and goes around it, and you're like, what are you doing? Oh, I didn't know I couldn't be back here. Yes, you did. Like, I don't mind those conversations. And so we have put resources into that. It truly is, and I guess I'm just going to speak quite directly. We have great parent and student partnerships. We have so many parents in this district who are absolutely wonderful to work with. But we are running into, there is a continued handful who have no issue with their child being suspended on Monday and then dropping them off on Friday to continue those behaviors without, you know, partnering with us in any capacity. And we just have to start having that pushback up. I'm so proud of our kids for their behavior in the stands. I'm so proud of the 3 parent emails that I got. Hey, we were sitting next to the student section at the Beal City game, and not just cleaning up at the end, but their conduct throughout the game, their cheers, and just generally their demeanor throughout the game is getting us positive emails. I don't want those kids all of a sudden to be on the hook for $3 because you know, somebody wants to do pull-ups on the scoreboard, and those kind of things, messing with the EMT ambulance, physical altercations, and then generally just not putting their trash in trash cans. It is a huge pet peeve of mine. We'll watch them just chuck it, and again, it's all anecdotal, but I don't want the many to be punished for the behavior in the field.
Sounds good.
Well, I think it's pretty standard for schools if a student is suspended that they're not to be on school grounds, period, anyway.
So we would be, so every district is the same in this capacity. If you are suspended from school during that suspension window, you're not allowed on campus. So we will be flying solo with this policy.
That extends
So
beyond
because of
return.
the extended period on it, which is why though, again, I just look at how do you wanna look at it. So right now, I argue that there could be more pushback saying we're gonna suspend you and add this, as opposed to you get your suspension and your extracurricular suspension, and we might potentially remove your extracurricular suspension. That feels more restorative to me than, like, because then what is the delineation for why we're adding that? Because right now it's just, well, because we've suspended you twice and we've had to remove you from an extracurricular event, now it's just, here's a blanket rule, you know what, this was a one-off situation, we can set an arbitrary date to have them return.
You can earn it back, earn the privilege
Yep,
back.
correct, and so hopefully that incentivizes it again. I think I'm very confident in any of my actions and track records as a principal that I'm not a punitive human being in nature. Like I don't like punishment, but this is these are extracurricular events, these are privileges, these are not rights. I'm not denying a child access to math curriculum or English curriculum, we're not kicking kids out of class. You don't get to watch a football game because you're littering and destroying property. Like, that's not controversial to me. So that's just kind of where we're at in our thought process, because I don't want to charge. It is a point of pride that we let our kids come to these things for free. But it is also getting to a point when you look around and you see 2,000 people, and 2 of the people that are helping you navigate that have to drive kids home. And in fairness, of the 2 kids being driven home, only one of them would have been not allowed under our policy. The other one, it was a first-time incident. But I will then argue the point that had the one student not been there, the second student probably didn't get roped into it. And so, yeah. It never feels good to put a punitive policy in place, but again, I just don't think this is going to have a consequential effect on a large percentage of students, but the 10 or so that it might impact building-wide, it would do a lot of good for us, Mr. Watson, Mr. Moore, and myself.
Sounds good. Any further questions?
I just want to thank the 3 of you for finding a nice middle ground, because I agree, not charging kids is huge, and that we can continue to adhere to that and not have to implement that to just purchase, additional service hours for more monitors. I think this is the better way to go. So, thank you.
All right, superintendent's report.
All right. Some ESSER updates. Currently, it depends on when you were in Collins last, one of the 4 hallways around the gym that received the new ceiling tiles and grids is actually being redone at the contractor's expense. Because the new lights going down one, not all 4, fortunately just one of the hallways, were not installed in the center of the hall. They were offset by about a grid square, so about 2 feet. When the final inspection came through, that contractor was directed to remove the grid work completely, install all new grid work properly centered, reinstall the lights, reinstall the ceiling tiles. So they have been here last week. They're wrapping up this week. They'll be done. And so that will be squared away and straight and narrow, so to speak. That work is all happening in the afternoon, so it's not impacting the instructional day. We are still in the middle of the poured rubber athletic surface project upstairs in the gym. Part of the new flooring has been installed and completed. The bleachers have been unbolted and moved back so they could finish an area in front. This Thursday, the bleacher company will drive the bleachers forward onto the finished section so they can start doing the place where the bleachers have been sitting. Company, I just found out at 6 p.m. that they will be here tomorrow as well, so they'll be padding and gluing down and starting to level other areas upstairs, and then finish the rest of the surface around the track. So excited to see that come to fruition very soon. We're still awaiting installation of the 2 new generators for both schools. If you've seen, there's a concrete pad poured by the closest entrance to the bus garage back of Collins, and then the new concrete pad for this building is out behind the gym. So those are just simply back ordered. They're running a little bit behind, but they're wired, they're plumbed for gas, so as soon as they arrive, they'll be set and mounted. And finally, I'm working with our architects and construction managers to prepare this fall's set of bids that go out via RFP statewide to secure quotes for the replacement of the old carpet in all of the classrooms in this building, as well as the vinyl sheet flooring in the hallways at Collins. We will be exploring VCT tile replacement as originally discussed, but we're also going to be looking at poured epoxy flooring for some of these areas. We anticipate these projects starting much like this summer, as soon as school gets out in June with a completion date of late August 2024. One of the reasons we're looking at the poured epoxy is by breaking the project up into 2 different areas of focus, one doing tile and one doing epoxy, it's likely we'll get 2 different companies. And if there's one thing we've learned with some of the delays that have happened this summer, if you have just one company doing the work and something happens, there's not a lot you can do about the good news with a project like this, if we do have 2 phases going, epoxy floor as well as VCT tile, if something gets slowed down, the other work can still carry on. No guarantees that speeds the total up any, but just thinking back to some of the hiccups that happened this summer that caused me some white hairs, I think that would be a nice option to consider. Plus, if we think about it from the standpoint of short-term cost, long-term benefit, the VCT tile will need to be stripped, waxed, and buffed minimum of every summer, but oftentimes we also do it over winter break. And so if we're looking at 80,000 square feet of flooring, and we tile that much, that is a lot of custodial manpower, and additional wax and, buffing, scrubber brushes and all of that. If all of those hallways at Collins end up being the poured epoxy surface, you don't need to wax and buff that. So it's a very simple cleanup with the floor Zamboni like they do here on the terrazzo floor. And essentially the poured epoxy would look a lot like the hard terrazzo. You can pick the fleck that you want to put in, you can color it, with some green hues or do a swirl, you can do all sorts of things. So I don't really know what that cost breakdown is going to look like, but we're going to quote it both ways because I think that would be a neat option to look at. And once, much like the board did last time, once we get those quotes from the bid openings, you would, have a meeting with Dale or someone else from Wolgaston to come here and present the quotes along with the recommendation. The board would then approve each individual step of that process. Also, just received an update last week from regarding the Altria class action lawsuit. For those who may have forgotten, some months ago, the Houghton Lake Board voted to join thousands of other districts around the country in a class action lawsuit against Altria Group Inc., a maker of vaping products. Essentially, this lawsuit is to do 2 things. Number one, to collect damages for the companies marketing their products to minors, and to really put a stop on their marketing these sorts of products to minors in the future. The proposed settlement will be discussed via Zoom. We have a meeting on the 28th, so later this week, in greater detail with me, Board President Christian, Vice President Jeske. Our attorneys have recommended that to avoid a possible OMA challenge, that we have less than a quorum of the board beyond that Zoom call. So I thought it made sense just to start with our 2 officers there, and then so that way the 3 of us will hear the proposal. I have the proposed dollar amount. The offer is $2,524 for this district and about 3,000 other districts. However, the dollar amount does change based on a couple of things that the court put into the formula. One thing was the relative impact these products were having on each school district, school environment, how much time the school district's administration was spending managing enforcement of these issues, and then how many students were enrolled in the district. So if you think about Houghton Lake with about 1,160 kids, and you think about Watson wearing out those Monarchs running around the building, we have 1 Watson and 1 pair of Monarchs and 1 Goodwin and 1 Zrevsky, but a district like Charlotte-Mecklenburg with 120,000 kids and 17 high schools, and it's obviously a much bigger deal. So the $2,524 proposal is the bottom tier. We are in the bottom tier primarily because of school size, not because Mr. Goodwin and Mr. Watson aren't amazing. We will hear their Zoom proposal, but now that I know the dollar amount, unless our attorneys are encouraging us not to settle, which I don't think they will, my guess is the recommendation will be to settle. Otherwise, you risk losing this, and then you're on the hook for your own legal fees if you want to fight Altria as an individual district. So I did look, I got the spreadsheet of all the districts throughout the country just to see how large some of the settlements were. And sure enough, some were over 1 million, but if you're Dade County, Florida, with that number of students, that many high schools, I get it. So this is our piece of the pie that's being proposed. So we will know more after our Zoom later this week, and then what I told the attorney firm was after we do our due diligence, we will report this to the board at our October board meeting and then actually have to vote on it. So you will see it come to you for a vote at the October meeting. We also received outreach this week from an area forest management company, or forestry management company, I should say, regarding the district's forested property out in Merritt. George and I will just give them a call to learn more about what they're thinking, the age of this stand of trees, and what options they're recommending, if any, for proper long-term maintenance of the forest. And once I know more, I'll certainly report back to the board. I asked George, and he thinks it's been probably 8-10 years maybe, or longer, since the board did a thinning cut. You really don't have to do anything, or you could do a thinning cut if you find that a recommendation is a thinning cut would actually help the rest of the stand grow better. So once I have more, I will bring this back to the board. And then finally, I talked about it last meeting, but I'll talk about it again. At the November 7th, or on November 7th, sorry, the district will be asking our voters to renew our district's operating millage. And as a reminder, this operating millage is levied against non-homestead families and business owners only. The renewal of the millage raises approximately $9 million each year, or the millage would then generate $9 million each year for the district, and it represents the largest portion of our total annual operating budget. These are the funds that we receive to really do everything here that we do. And again, just to reiterate, homeowners and renters here in Houghton Lake Community are not required to pay this millage. And that is my opinion.
All right, any questions? All right, seeing none. Moving to action items, looking for a motion to approve the Carter Crompton quote for gym divider curtain in the amount of $12,600 from the general fund.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Jeske, supported by Oster. Discussion? Does anybody have any questions? All right.
No.
Roll call?
Christian,
Yes.
Jeske,
Yes.
Bowles,
Yes.
Oster,
Yes.
Souter, Whittington, Holiday.
All right, motion carries 4-0. Any discussion?
I'll just say I took a visit over to Collins today. I talked to Ben about it. I'm not familiar with the building at all. My kids are all here, so I know most of you probably have been in Collins at least more than I have been. So I just felt like I needed to take a peek, and Alicia was gracious and showed me around and all of that, and it was neat to see, and just kind of get the lay of the land and some of the projects that are done that look really nice, and some of the projects I know we have coming up, that I'm like, oh yeah, I know why that's a project we have coming up.
You got to
So
see
anyway,
the
it was-
vinyl floors.
Oh man, and the rugs covering and all, yeah,
Yeah.
but it was just, it was great to go over, so, and I was just appreciative of Alicia take her time, because I know busy doing her job, but it was just a good experience.
All right, good. Anybody else? All right, seeing none, 7:03. We are adjourned.
Thank you.